Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started. All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have special guest Mimi Smith. Mimi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you for the next 45, 60 minutes.
Yeah, me too. I was looking at your profile on Instagram, Dreamy Mimi. I love it.
Yeah.
How'd you get that?
Oh man, gosh, that goes back to when I first got Instagram, in 2012, and the name stuck and people knew it. And once you got something going, it's hard to change.
Yeah, look, once you get followers and things like that, you don't want to
Exactly.
change it up, right?
Exactly. Got to give the
So,
people what they want, and they know me as Dreamy Mimi, so that I have to stay.
and I love it. It rhymes, it's very catchy. So,
It's what every sophomore in high school would name themselves on Instagram.
exactly. But that was you were a sophomore in high school.
Probably something like
So
that.
it
Yeah.
has been a while. It's funny is I've had Instagram for a long time, but I never really started just hardcore using it until I started this podcast. And I was like, there's a lot of people on it. It's a little bit different than Facebook. And I don't think 26-year-olds or less, if you're younger, really use Facebook. Is that true? Or
No, to be honest, I don't really I have it and I'll
yeah.
check, like, occasionally, but I more used Instagram, and I don't have a TikTok, which I think
I don't either.
a lot of people my age do have a TikTok, but I
Yeah.
think the heavier posters on TikTok are a couple years younger than me, so I'm in that sweet
Mm,
spot. Instagram was definitely my generation's social media versus I think a couple years older than me, it was probably more Facebook, and a couple of
yeah.
years below me is definitely more Instagram or, TikTok and, like, Snapchat and stuff.
You've probably never heard of MySpace, but that was way before it all started.
Yeah.
That's where it started, right?
Yes,
Facebook just did a way better job. Um,
exactly.
You've done a lot of running in your career, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I know as of recent, you ran the U.S. Olympic team trials back
Mhm.
in the springtime. Is that right?
I did, yep, in February,
Yeah.
1st
How'd
of
that go?
February. It was good. I say that with a little bit more hesitation in terms of it was a really hot day. Had them in Orlando, Florida in February,
Yeah.
and even though it was the winter time, still a lot warmer temperatures than most of the people who were racing and they were
I mean, it's
running.
Florida. So,
Exactly, no matter what. And originally they were gonna have us go off at 12 o'clock, and they posted because of people saying that's way too late to run a
yeah.
race, especially in Florida, especially for a marathon. Please bump it up. They bumped it up till I think we ended up going off at a 10:20 start time. I learned a lot about myself during that race. It was one of my because every single race up until that point I had PR'd,
Yeah.
and that race I didn't. And so I felt like it was a really good learning opportunity for me. And I finished technically in the top half. So I got 65th overall. But I think it was the first time I really had to run and continue running, knowing I wasn't going to get a PR, knowing that my time was steadily decreasing, and basically focus on finishing and gritting it out versus really not getting discouraged from the time I was seeing on my watch. It taught me how to race and the importance of literally hitting every single water stop, every single sponge,
Yeah.
like cold sponge you could get. What is your routine? How are you fueling? You cannot, especially the paces that we're trying to run in that weather, you cannot mess around with that stuff because it'll put you in a bad spot if you don't put your nutrients and your hydration
100%.
first. It was an incredible experience. On like Dakota Ludworm, Fiona O'Keefe, Emily Sisson, all the people who qualified are in your same starting tent. You're riding up an elevator with Connor Mance.
First time
All
that
these
you've had a
types of
chance to
things.
be with some of those type of elite runners, or
Yes and no. I would think
okay.
in a fashion where I'm competing, absolutely. But in the sense of I've been running for so long. I started running competitively, I guess as competitive as it can be in 7th grade and then up in high school and college. But there were some opportunities where I was able to go to some national races in high school and you get to see pro runners there. I went to Wake Forest University and we used to have this really big professional invitational at an indoor track we had in the same town as my college. So we would go to and watch, and we got to meet. I remember one time Matt Sensuitz was there racing, and he came with us on the long run. So
It's
definitely,
pretty cool.
it was cool to transition into. I've known all these people. I've seen them. I follow them. You know the names. To okay, we're on the starting line together.
Yeah.
I've made it. At least I'm here competing. So that's pretty cool. And in general, I would say what I really liked about this Olympic cycle and fun to be a part of it in the sense of getting the trials, but really fun to watch because
Mm,
all the big names were people I was like running at the same time in college. Eleanor Purrier, Elise Cranny, Yard Nagoose, Cole Hawker, all those guys were all running and we were watching them at nationals. So, gosh, it was just such a blast this year to be able to actually watch them compete on the Olympic stage and be like, yeah, they were the real deal back then, and they just keep showing that they're the real deal now.
That's pretty awesome. So
Mm.
you ran before that to qualify was a 2:34 in Chicago. Is that right?
Yep.
That's not a PR for you though, right?
That was my PR, yeah.
Okay.
2:34 was my PR to get to the Olympic trials. Yeah, I was just trying to get under that 37 because that's the cutoff,
Yeah.
and I was really happy with that time, I think. So, it was 4-minute PR for me too. Earlier that spring, I had ran in Boston, and I was, I think, 2:38:33, a minute 33 seconds off, and I remember my watch not being great splitting, so I honestly had no idea where I was at, and when you cross that finish line, it's like a feeling of, "Oh my god, that's a great PR for me, that's so great, but oh
Yeah.
my god, it's so close," but it still doesn't count.
Yeah.
I have some connections through I run for a Heartbreak running company,
Hmm.
and with some connections with them down in Chicago, I was able to get into the American Development Program, even though I signed up late for Chicago. So shout out to them because I wouldn't have been able to get to the Olympic trials without them. And as a result, I got to run in Florida in February.
Thank you for all that background. That was pretty impressive. And we'll get probably a little bit into what's next for you. But the reason really I found you was because you won the half marathon, a recent half marathon in
Mhm.
Dallas. So it's Run Dallas. And from my understanding, you've won it the last 3 years in a row. Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm. Since I
But
moved down to Dallas and been able to run it.
yeah, no, and it's great that we have somebody local that's running and that's an elite athlete within Dallas. So tell me about these half marathons. What'd you think this year of Run Dallas Half?
It is honestly my favorite weekend in Dallas. Don't get me wrong, there's an element of it that it's really fun winning and
Yeah,
getting
of
to run a
course.
really fast time, of course. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's not fun winning, but
We should all know that it's fun winning. Like,
exactly.
there's no reason to say, "Oh, I won." That's not the main thing. It helps, you
Yes, it
know?
helps a little bit. It helps make the
Of
experience
course.
special for sure. But the last 3 years, I was also just through my connections of Train Pegasus, which is a
Yeah.
great running community, and Alfonso Gonzalez, which is one of the leaders, along with Jill Wolf, who put that group together. They're super involved in the Dallas run community as well. And Fonz was able, he's really a big part of the kids run. He helps out with it. He volunteers every year. And then one of our friends, Jody Jordan, is actually, she helps put on the kids event as her part of her job with Event Southwest. So we have a lot of connections with the kid race. So the past 3 years, I volunteered, and that is always what I do the Saturday beforehand. Sometimes you can watch the Friday night runs on
The
Friday the
mile.
mile and I don't know if it's an 800 or just a mile race, but
I think
so
no, the kids is that morning, Saturday
the kids
morning,
is
and
the
then
Saturday
the
morning
mile.
one.
Yeah.
So it's just my favorite weekend because it's so much fun to get to be a part of it and volunteer and watch all the kids run and then actually get to participate in the event yourself and run the next day. And we all come together as a group after. I stayed, I think, by the starting line or at the start and finish line for like almost an hour to 2 hours after the race, just meeting people, talking with people and stuff. So
Wow.
I do really love the actual run, but I think it's really fun to also be a part of the event in different ways too, and celebrating everyone because we have so many people we know who run it. It's really fun
Yeah.
to support the people who are out there getting after it, no matter what their pace is or what their goals are.
Something that I've heard you say, and on this podcast, we talk a lot about community and building, running in the community and having people that can run with you. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned Pegasus, so I don't know if that's the group you run with, or
Mhm.
do you find it helpful running in a group and a community and building that kind of stuff? Because I mean, I sure do.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I think that running with a group helps keep you accountable and especially doing the workouts, even if you guys aren't exactly all on the same
Yeah.
pace. I think just having a group that meets so early before work really helps. So I guess I run with 3 groups in Dallas, Train Pegasus and Completely Sloths, which I know you were interviewing Travis the other day, and that's how we got connected, and I know him. The groups are intertwined with each other, and we've got a lot of individuals who are of similar paces. There's a wide range, but especially some of the guys that I run with, and then a couple of the gals. There's a couple of gals. Jennifer Pope is an individual who also
I've heard of her.
qualified for the Olympic trials. She's in Plano, sometimes comes down to run with us, but we've got a good group of people who are around similar paces, who we do workouts together. We come together as a group, decide kind of our training plan. We have a big Excel sheet. We try to do similar races. Like a lot of us are going to be doing Boston in the spring. So we'll probably come together and say, hey, this is my training plan, so that we can at least coordinate and have similar workouts on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And then we meet together to run on Thursdays. So those are the main groups that I do my runs with. And honestly, it would be really hard to wake up at like 4:30 in the morning to do workouts if you didn't have people to meet. For example, today I didn't have anyone to meet and I pressed snooze and I ran after work instead. So I think just for me, the social aspect and accountability, it's something I look forward to. And they're some of my best friends in Dallas. That helps so much. And then also, if I'm having a bad day, my teammate might not be having a bad day. And at least if I can say on to them, we'll be okay, or vice versa. Having run on teams basically my whole life, I think, and I remember Travis talking about this on the podcast because I was listening, the camaraderie of just having that group together. And even though it's competitive because you want to be faster than the next person, at the end of the day, your speed has nothing to do with their speed in terms of like placement on a team. If it's a soccer team, we're not competing for the same spot. We're just competing to run. So if I have a great day and I PR and you had a great day and you PR'd a little bit better, we both did our personal best. That's, I think, one of the main reasons. I just think running is a great way to celebrate your strengths and your accomplishments versus, don't get me wrong, it's a super comparable sport. That's just competition. But I think when you get into your adult life and it's not like high school or college and it's just our hobby and our sense of entertainment and enjoyment, it's a little bit more easy to stomach and it's just more fun to celebrate other people.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for that. So it's funny because Travis did mention he ran with you for the first 4 miles or so of the half marathon for you in full marathon. And he was just so thankful that you were there and that he had a chance to run with you. So
He's way faster than me. So it was fun to run with him for 4 miles until he took off. So
He might be faster, but I wouldn't say way. Your PR is 2:34. He just got a 2:26, right? It's a difference, but
yeah,
who knows? Look, I think you both probably have opportunities to probably even get better. So that'd be fun to watch.
Definitely. And he's so young and I'm 27. So all relative of your aerobic capacity peaking at 30 to 32, there's a lot of room for both of us to develop.
Exactly. And I think it was his, what, was it his second or first marathon? It's his
First.
Yeah. He's definitely got room to grow if he
definitely
cares to do that. And him being a medical student is going to be really hard, I think, but he has some lofty goals. One of the things that I was reading about you, and I mentioned this earlier before kind of the pre-show, was around in 2018, you were hanging out with some friends and things like that at a track or something, and you took some signs. What's going on?
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone who ran in college, or honestly anyone who has ever, anyone who's ever been in college loves to steal some signs. We have a Duke track, do not enter during track time sign out front on our little stoop that I stole when I was either at Duke or at Wake. But it was our regional meet. And the way NCAAs work, for individuals who don't know, is basically outside of your conferences to get to nationals. You have to go to a regional meet first and then qualify for nationals. At the regional meet, there's a west or an east and a west, and top 48 of your time or throw or jump get to qualify for regionals, and then top 12 from there qualify for nationals, so that at the end of the day at nationals, you have 24 individuals. So it's a pretty intense competition to even just get to the regionals. And I had a decent amount of people from my running team who got there from our distance squads. I did the 10K. My 10K was done on Thursday. The meet didn't end until Saturday. So I was just moseying around because I unfortunately didn't qualify for nationals, but it was great because I was done my season and I could just watch everyone else and have fun. And so there was a lot of signs around the track. And when they were finishing up the track, we were able to steal one sign and stuff it in someone's bag and go back. But then we got super greedy. And we had a friend who lived locally who had her car. So even though curfew, I don't know, was probably at 11, we drove back to the track to see what was going on. And there were some people taking down some of the other signs, but in general, it was pretty dead. And we could walk around the track without really anyone questioning us. And then I went up to someone, I said, "Hey, are these signs, are you guys just gonna throw them away or what are you doing?" And he was like, "I just work for the local university. If you want the sign, go ahead and
Right.
take it." And he was even like, "Here, take my scissors." I was like, "Great." So I was starting to cut down the signs, and all of a sudden, across the other side of the track, I hear someone yelling something, and I can't hear what they're saying, so I just go back to cutting. And then all of a sudden, I hear someone rev up a little gator, and then I see someone in their motor gator or golf cart, whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
running at us or motoring at us and still yelling. And very clearly, they were yelling at me and my friend who were trying to
Uh-huh.
cut down these signs. And I figured out in that moment, I am in the fight or flight. I am a flighter.
Uh-huh.
And there was like a
No fighting,
13-foot
huh?
fence. I like flew over the top of that fence. And before I knew it, I was on the other side off of the actual track area. But my friend, unfortunately, she's a freezer. So she was just frozen solid. And I was like, I was yelling her name. I was like, "You have to move." And so finally I got her to run and she was able to run and get out of a little opening in the fence. And we were sprinting in the random campus. It was dark. No students are left on campus in June or something. Maybe even May. I don't even know what time of year around what it was, but there's no one on campus. And so we think we're safe. But then the motor gator is coming at us and it turns off his light. And so all you can hear is the rev because I think they were trying to spook us or something.
Uh-huh.
And so we're running around this campus. All we can hear is this motor. I thought I was going to get kicked off my team. I ran faster trying to escape that thing than I did in the race, but
Well, good thing.
didn't get caught, didn't get the extra sign either because I flew over that fence, but still have a couple of other signs that I think I have a couple too still with me now.
That's
So
awesome.
it's always just good stories and always fun to steal gear.
I'm surprised you just didn't go back later, like an hour later and or
Even
something.
later,
Yeah.
at that point, I was cutting too close. We were past curfew. I had so many.
You're already
And my
scared you're
I
gonna
know,
get
and
kicked
my
off
one
soon.
friend who made nationals, I was terrified that they were gonna see our
Oh, man.
gear because I was dumb. I wore a Wake Forest gear. I was afraid they were gonna see our gear and report to our coach. So we were like, we're not going back.
Wow. That sounds like a fun time. We can talk about
Yeah,
it later.
exactly. She ran
So,
at nationals and it was all good. So that's all I
yeah.
cared about.
Yeah. All right, let's go back. So you won the half marathon. What are you thinking about next? What's the up and coming? Is it Boston is the big deal?
Yeah, Boston is I'm waiting to hear back if I got an elite bid, but I'm
Mm,
gonna also do a half in Miami. I've
okay.
got a friend that lives down there, so I'll stay with her and it's a pretty good a marathon, just a weekend in February. And I like to do when I'm training a half marathon somewhere in the training cycle just to get a good little pace run in,
Yeah.
get the legs moving. I like to do it usually a little bit closer to the race, but it's okay to do a couple months out. So I'll do that, Boston, and then I have a couple of personal obligations and weddings this fall. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I made the decision to not do a fall race just because I wouldn't be able to race it the way I want to. But looking into my 4-year racing plan, the Olympic trials again will be in 2028. Yes, in the February to March range of 2028 for that summer
Isn't
of
that in LA this
2028.
year?
It is, yeah.
2028? Okay.
And they haven't announced where the Olympic trials for the marathon will be, but wherever it is, the window to qualify opens starting in 2026.
Okay.
So my plan, kind of thinking of my 3 years out, is take this year, do Boston, and then maybe do a couple of fast halves, maybe a couple of 10Ks, try to really work on my speed in the summer and fall of 2025, and then try to knock out an OTQ in the beginning of 2026 so that I get that qualifier out of the
Yeah.
way. And then because I know the 2026 and 2027 kind of years are going to be pretty heavy marathon years for me. I would love to do New York City. I've got Chicago and Boston. So maybe New York City 2026. But again, just got to see what life obligations come up.
Yeah.
There's always
Well,
things
a
that
lot of
come up.
stuff could happen. Who knows? I
Exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's good. I love that you have this big plan and focus on what you pretty much know is going to come up. Like you said, life can come up. Is there a specific marathon that you're thinking in early 2026? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah. If I want to crank it out as early as possible, Houston would be a great one
Yeah.
just because it's so flat, it's local.
It's a great one.
It would be a good ability for me to train through the fall and let whatever obligations come, but then have a little bit of extra time to extend and not feel so pressured to do one in October or November. I could wait till January. So I think
Have you run Houston
that
before? Or?
I haven't, no. So
Okay.
I also want to because I've heard such great things and so many people down in the DFW area go do
Yeah,
it every
it's
year.
awesome.
So yeah.
My wife's done it
Mhm.
several times, and
Okay.
I've done the half. I do more halves than fulls, but this next year we're doing the one in Austin, International Austin. It used to be.
Oh, okay.
So it's a half, but
Yeah, I've heard good things about that too. Is
super
that
fast.
I've heard there's 2 halves, one that's the 3M that's hilly
Yep.
and one that's not so hilly?
The 3M used to be called 3M. It's now International Half, and so that's the one,
Okay.
the not hilly, and that's here in January, coming
Got
up
it, nice,
in a
nice,
few
okay,
weeks. And then the
cool.
other one
Good
that you're
luck.
thinking of, whatever it's called, is the one that's super hilly.
For hilly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they have a marathon on that one. I don't think
Okay,
the
okay.
international one, the one that's coming up, is only a
It's just a
half
half.
marathon and a 10K.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think Houston last year or this year, it's still December. I ran the half and ran a pretty fast time for me, and it was fun. It's just
Yeah,
the last mile. It's just you fly
really?
because it's slight downhill,
Yeah,
and it's just and it's there's also the last couple of miles. There's a slight hill, but it's nothing.
yeah. I
So
think especially in marathon races, long or longer distances in general, I think we fear uphills a lot, but I think there is a little bit of a benefit to being able to change your gait when you
mm,
go up and down slight inclines, because if you are constantly doing the same motion on the same grade
yeah,
for 26 miles, it's a little bit easier for your muscles to lock up and you get cramps or get stiff. We've all felt that feeling when we're doing these marathons where we just feel like all of a sudden our legs are about to buckle or something isn't moving. And I think going up hills or down hills
it's a
can
good
just
thing.
help you change your position just because you have to because of the forces of gravity. And sometimes that'll actually help loosen up. Don't always fear the incline or sometimes just lean into it and say, hey, this is helping me adjust, fix your form, you know?
And I'm not sure if you've ever, and I know how intense you are and just your road races and trying to accomplish all these things, but thinking of along that same lines, like trail running really helps. I like to balance it out. I do a lot of road racing, but when you actually start running some of the trails, your muscle, it's a lot of different muscles than just the same ones that you're just going on the road each time. And I find that that's helped me actually to get a little bit faster if I can focus a little bit on the trails as well. If I were to do 2 or 3, let's say runs or races or whatever a month, let's say not races, but at least runs, it can help you a ton. And I think that
Oh,
because
yeah.
it changes up the gait and depending on the trail, it could be rocky or those kinds of things. Have you ever done any trail races or
I
runs?
have not. I've done a couple of trail runs, but my boyfriend actually has done a lot more than me. He was out in Charlotte, North Carolina for a while, and there's a place called the Uwharrie National Forest
Uh,
that they do a 50K, and he did that race. And I know he would go out to Georgia on the Appalachian Trail and do a lot of running out there. And it is interesting from what he's told me. I know obviously there's statistics about how much different energy usage running
yeah,
on a trail versus it's more than like 10% more energy to run on a trail versus a road. And you have to be so much more cognizant of where you're stepping because you
yeah,
have to use your ankle stabilizers a lot more and obviously not twist an ankle, trip. You have to watch where you're stepping. I think just the mental concentration of doing that alone is so much harder. I know I've not personally raced. I
by the way,
probably think it'll be harder than doing road
it
races.
is, in
What
some
I
ways it's harder, but it's also
Yeah.
more laid back. It's because you're not going to be able to run your 6 minute miles. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? The reality is, not to say you couldn't run a 6 minute mile on,
Mm.
but the route in most cases, you're probably, depending on the trail, it all depends. It could be maybe it's 8 minute miles instead of
Mhm.
six, or maybe it's 9 minute. You just don't know if you're going up a mountain,
Yeah,
like,
it's just a completely different kind of
yeah,
nature, and we've had some people down here who we're friends with who like, one of our friends just ran the Moab 420 or
uh,
sorry, 240, and the stories that he was saying, it's just a completely different type of beast, and it's a
yeah,
completely different animal in terms of I wouldn't obviously, I think running 240 is the Moab 240 is harder than a marathon, but I think the goals are
yeah,
different, right? Like you said, even if you're comparing a marathon to a mile, the energy and systems you use in your body are completely different. The goal pace, the muscles that you use are completely different, right? Like you're tapping into your type 2s more than your type ones of your muscle fibers. There's so much difference in nutrients that you have to focus on. Like it just, it's a completely different sport, even though it's the same motion, right? Which is interesting thing to think.
It's so interesting. And going back to your 5K, 10Ks, do you like when you're in college, do you still do some of those? You mentioned that you might do some 10Ks and some speed stuff this
Mhm.
year or this next year because of stuff going on, weddings and things like that.
Yeah, I raced a turkey trot
Yeah.
this past, and I signed up for a last minute. And I think to train for this half, I was doing a little bit more speed work after I ran Chicago, and I just wanted to do a little bit more speed work rather than threshold work. And I think I don't know if it necessarily helped me as much with my half, but it really helped me run a 5K. I was the fastest road 5K I've ever run. And I just signed up randomly.
So really on the turkey trot was your fastest 5K?
My fastest road. I definitely run faster
Yes.
on the track, but I ran like 16:36, I think was my time. And I didn't also it was 30 degrees. I was back home in Chicago, 30 degrees. So I think just having cold weather and getting a run like that,
Yeah.
my body was like, let's go. And it felt really good and it felt fun to go fast again.
Yeah.
Again, it takes years to get your body to a point where it can do marathons and do them well because it's changing up your
Absolutely.
system completely. You're really training your body to tolerate that load, but at the same time, you're also training it to focus on endurance and
Yeah.
efficiency with running rather than all out speed. And I think if you run a 5K right, and especially when you're getting down to pretty fast times, it should feel like you're going the whole
Yeah.
time. It was really fun in college. I think I'm excited to maybe focus on that for a little bit, and I probably can do a little bit better in the 10K area than the 5K, but
Mm.
hopefully I can find some good races around here and do it, but I
There's
haven't
tons of
made that a
races.
priority. Yeah, I know, I just gotta find one, and yeah, like you said, there's tons of races. There's more 5Ks probably just around you can sign up for last minute anyways too.
The one thing about, yeah, most of the time those aren't sold out. They let whoever wants to come and as
Yeah.
many people as you want. And there's some good ones. I don't know if you want to do the summer, but the beauty about 5Ks is that it's always a party. You can go to a nice big 5K and it's, oh my God, like thousands of people are here.
Mm,
And
yeah.
they have mimosas and all these other things that it's, wow, I don't remember this ever happening for a half or a full. It's just, but,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of that here in Dallas. So that's pretty quick. It's 16 something. Did you win that one or?
Yeah, mhm.
Okay.
It was in my, like, local town, so it was
Okay.
just north of Chicago in a town called Evanston.
Got it. Well, did you
Mhm.
win the all out or was some guys?
No, there's pretty fast guys. There was
Okay.
actually a guy and a gal who came down from Michigan, and I think they both ran for a very nice track club, which is the, club that Hobbs Kessler runs for,
Okay.
which is he did got, I think, 5th in the 1,500 at the Olympics. He's a really young guy. They were pretty fast runners, and I
That's
think the
some,
guy in that group won it. He
he
ran a
won it.
pretty fast time, yeah, low
Got it.
15s.
So what is like, okay, so for the half marathon, for example, you won it and stuff like that, but what was that training cycle like for you? Was it just hardcore or were you just taking it easy from a training standpoint? What did that look like?
So for this particular half marathon, I would say I was definitely training hard. I was hitting 60 miles a week,
Okay.
but relative to other training cycles, it was a little bit more of a down period for me
Mm.
because I did an 18-week program for Chicago, and Chicago was mid-October. And when I was doing that training cycle, I was running, getting up to 80 miles a week with 2 swims, 2 strengthening sessions. This is on top of full-time work and everything. So I was a little bit burnt out in terms of,
Of course.
and I know myself, if I want to be like revved up and ready to go for my next marathon, you
Yeah.
got to take a little bit of downtime in between. So even though it was still a lot of mileage, I wouldn't say I was doing all the things I probably needed to in terms of swimming and
Yeah.
strengthening like I did. So that's why when I'm like hesitant to say I went all out for this training cycle, there just were a couple of things I was probably not doing that I should have been doing to optimize. But at the same time, I'm not gonna be able to be 100% with all my training all year round, so you gotta pick and choose
Yeah. I
your
mean,
battles.
a half marathon's not it is a great race for you, but
Mhm.
at this point, it just sounds like it wasn't the whole race to go to.
And I think the main goal was I would have loved to PR. I felt like if it was maybe maybe if I paced it a little bit better from the beginning, I could have been a little bit more consistent throughout it
It's
because
pretty
it was a
warm
little
though.
bit, it was pretty warm and it was humid. So taking that into consideration, overall, I was happy with my time and I wanted to make sure I went out there and got the win. So that was the main thing that I was focusing on. What I did in this training cycle relative to other training cycles was I worked a lot more, like I said, on my speed. So I
Mm.
followed the Jack Daniels training program. And for their recommendations for half marathon, they say add a threshold workout throughout the week and interval or a repetition workout throughout the week, where threshold is your half marathon pace. And then like marathon pace efforts are the two longer distance. So you'll be doing like 3+ miles at those efforts and paces. The repetition and the interval paces, you're going to be doing more like maybe your mile repeats, more like your Ks and your 800s and your 400s. So I did a lot of those types of workouts. And like I said, I think it really helped with my 5K. I think
Yeah.
maybe if it was like back in 2023, we had 40-degree weather when we started. Maybe I could have busted out a little bit quicker of a time. But again, I went out to race it and I went out really hot, wanting to put up a gap. And I was
Yeah.
able to maintain that gap. So I did what I had to do on that day.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about just kind of strategy during a race like that, because I'm really interested because I don't win races like you do. And so if you know that somebody's there, if you have a chance to win it, you're
Mhm.
there, okay, I think I could win it. But again, it always depends on who's there. But as
Mhm.
you size up your competition, is there a strategy to say, hey, if I go out super hot for the first 5 miles, I think I can leave this person or get them really tired? Are you
Mhm.
thinking those kinds of things, or what goes through your head?
No, absolutely. And funny enough, this race actually, when I was talking to Paul Box and Logan Sherman and some of the other people who put on the event or are involved in like the elite racers, there was a couple of people who they told me were really fast to
Yeah.
maybe keep your eye out or look up. And so going in, I knew there was someone who ran a really fast half marathon time, I think in the 111s, like very good runner, was at the Olympic trials. And then obviously Jennifer Pope. You had three girls in there who at
She's
the
fast.
marathon Olympic trials this past year.
Do you
Going
thrive
into
on
the
that, by the
race,
way? Just like, "Ooh, yeah, I can't wait," or do you get a little nervous? What's the
I was yeah, no, that's what I was about to say. I was nervous. I was like, "Okay, so this is gonna be an actual race."
like
Going in, I'm thinking, "Alright, it's like last year, let's go and do." I was like, "Ooh, okay." So found out on Friday there's gonna be some people in the
okay,
competition. My thinking is, "Okay, there's a couple of things that can happen here because we're used to the heat and humidity, so I'll have
yes.
that kind of in my favor, but
In
also
your
this
toolbox.
individual in my toolbox, but also this individual has a faster time than me at their PR, so they're a
Yeah,
phenomenal runner." So there's going to be a couple of things that might happen. You can either stick to your race plan, which I wanted to go out a little slower than I did. I always go out faster than I say. Like I always say I'm going slow. I always go out in
nothing
like
like
10 to
race
15
day to
seconds. Yeah,
blow it up.
exactly. All that adrenaline. But
Exactly.
this individual is either going to go out in the 5:20s because that's what their pace they've run their other,
Yeah.
excuse me, their other PR in, or they're going to go out slow. And you can either go out your race pace
Mm,
or you can go out with them, go way too hot, and then die. So I think my plan was either I was going to go out my race pace, she was going to be right there, and then I would like tack on to her and go. Excuse me, sorry.
it's okay.
Or she was going to go out really hot, and I was just going to have to stick to my race pace and see if I could reel her in. What ended up happening was I went out really hot. She wasn't there, and then I didn't really see her the rest of the race. Excuse me, sorry.
It's okay.
So I ended up not really racing her at all or any other females, but the whole time I kept thinking, again, this individual's super fast.
Yeah.
Every time someone was coming up me and I could hear steps, I mentally was preparing, okay, could it be them?
Could be
And
her.
what are you going to
Yeah.
do? Are you going to lock in and try to hang with them? Are you going to go as fast as you can and maybe you can't hang with them, but you need to stay mentally engaged? So I felt like what it did for me actually was the whole time I felt like I was running from someone. It
That's
helped me
good.
stay mentally engaged the whole
Yeah.
time. And there was 1 or 2 miles after the 8 mile mark, because most of that's uphill.
Yeah.
I felt like my legs were really starting to get tired. That what I talked about earlier, where you're getting that buckling feeling because
Mm,
your glucose is now low. I was like at that point trying to slam gels down, and I was able to. I had a slower mile, but then I was able to pick it back up and get back down to the 5:40 pace range. And I think it's because I was running in a way almost like scared that this person would be
Mhm.
coming up at any moment on me. It helped me stay engaged the whole time. Sometimes it's okay to run scared, and not scared because you're afraid you're going to blow up, but scared because you are being chased by something. And I don't know, that helped me and think about my strategies. It didn't end up playing out the way I thought it would, but I went in with a bunch of different game plans about how I wanted to react based off the individuals around me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that you actually have multiple different game plans going in and you just adjust. And in this particular one, your game plan was to act scared in a way, right? To push through it, knowing that you could be caught at any time because both these women that you knew could run at that pace,
Yeah.
you know?
And
And
they're
so
both
that's
phenomenal athletes. It's just sometimes how the race comes down to that day, right?
what the day gives you. And probably have no idea what they're going through, or even if they're like on their A game, how are they in as great shape as they're usually in? What did they run before? Are they injured? So unless you
Exactly.
just know them, that's really cool. And you just ran Chicago back in
Mhm.
October. Okay.
Yes.
I knew you did that in 2023, so you came back and did it again.
I did, yeah. And again, the decision for me with that was I'm from Chicago, so could
Yeah.
stay and see my parents. I wanted to Berlin and New York are still races I really want to do, but I also really want to do it when I am in a good financial spot and I'm in a spot where I can really train all out and do them well. And this year I had, again, 2 weddings this fall and a couple of other things this fall that we had commitments for. And then next year, again, I've got 2 or 3 weddings in the fall, so all out of state. And so
It's your age,
it is
27,
my age.
28,
It's all
29.
great, but I would rather just be 100% at
Yeah.
those events or 100% at the marathon. So
Yeah.
for me, time-wise, and rather than doing New York this past year because both of my weddings were in November, I was like, let's just do Chicago. It's a great race. I can get another good time, stay with my family. And it's funny, the place that I placed at in 2023 and 2024 was the exact same. So I finished 21st for the females both time, and I was the first non-elite finisher both times. A little bit
Super
slower this
fast.
year, like a
Super
minute
fast.
and 30 seconds slower. So I ran 2:35:52, I think, this year. So pretty
Great.
much very similar races,
Yeah.
which is consistency is good. So I'll
It probably
keep
just
going
tells
at
you
it.
you're still very close to that. And
Mhm.
just as you mentioned, is that it takes a while to do a breakthrough. I've seen many times where people run a marathon and they hit your first marathon's always, in general, not always, but slower. But then over the next few years, you just get better.
Mhm.
And a lot of people stay at that same time, right? And
Yeah.
then they start doing some different things, training, or their body is used to it, and then they have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
I feel like you're right there with this breakthrough. I mean, you're at 234, 235. It's coming. I
Yeah.
believe it. I mean, you're putting all the time, the effort, the focus. It's
Mhm.
coming. I have
Yeah.
no doubt about it. So that's going to be fun. Do
Yeah.
you have any thoughts around? I know you're super serious right now, but as kind of time moves on, thinking about maybe getting the 7 stars or
Mhm.
six, what is it, 5, 6 majors? The
Yeah. It was 6 majors and they added Sydney, so I
That's right.
think now
Is it
it's
still now
7, but
7?
I'm honestly not quite sure.
I don't think it
Um,
is technically yet. So right now it's just
Technically
6,
not. Okay.
and then it's the 7. It will come. Sydney will come. Do you think about that a lot, or is it just like,
No, I do think about it. To be honest, I think more about Chicago, New York, and Boston just because
Mhm.
they're phenomenal races on our turf. And then Berlin, just because Berlin has shown time and time again to be a extremely fast course. It's
Yeah.
at a perfect time of year and people just run excellent times. And I definitely would want to do Tokyo and London when given the opportunity. London is very challenging to get into because it's lottery and
Yep.
like English citizens are able to get in if they have a time, but nobody else is unless I'm in a position where I run really fast and maybe can get in with a pro field,
Yeah.
which I think I do have to run probably a lot faster at one of these majors to get in the way that I would be able to get in for London since it's so selective.
Or you just pay for it and that becomes really expensive.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of other really great marathons that I personally don't think I think would really wanna get the 6 stars, but for me, there's other versions of and other competitions, I think that are a little bit more important right now. The two next Olympic trial cycles, because the
Yeah.
next in 2028, I'll be 30, and then in 32, I'll be 34.
You
Those
got to go after those first.
maximizing my races with what I want to do and the best time. There's so many great places in America too, just to get marathons. You've got CIM is an absolutely great one. You've got Houston that we just talked about. There's Grandma. There's so many really
There's a ton
awesome
of them.
ones here. I would say it's hard because I think what I really liked about the major marathons was that at least with Boston, there was a level of, okay, now we're adding this. You need to be a certain caliber of speed to get in.
Yep.
Obviously, you've got the charities, which I think is great because they have to raise so much money to get in Boston for a charity. So anyone who does a charity is like, good for you because you guys
Yep.
worked your butt off to get that money raised. Absolutely worked your butt off. You deserve to be there 100%. But I think now with adding all of these majors, it's going to be interesting because now it becomes a, first of all, did you get in lucky lottery or
Yep.
do you have the financial means to do it? And it's interesting that we like celebrate that when it doesn't really seem like to me something not athletic accolade, more of a just were you given the luck of the draw.
Or did you give enough money?
Yeah, exactly. Which is again, if we're raising charity or but to each their own, if you can do it for sure. But I'm not gonna it's not like something that I'm gonna be heartbroken off if I don't get it, but I would be ecstatic if I did get it.
Yeah, my wife has run, this will be her 11th or 12th Boston in a row coming up. And so I love the race. I don't run Boston, and I try not to run too many marathons.
Mhm.
But so I love that race. And then just qualifying it every year is pretty impressive for
Yeah.
me to watch people do it year after year. And I just love Boston.
Yeah. I did too.
Yeah.
It's nice to go to an East Coast city.
It is. And it's a great one. Is there anything that you just wanted to talk about that I just missed completely?
Let me think. Yeah, I think one of the other run groups that I've gotten involved that I don't know if I mentioned it earlier is Oak Cliff Run Crew. And they're a group that runs out of Oak Cliff. There's a ton of really fast runners, but what I like about that run group is it's just a lot of people who are first time runners. Some of them walk, some of them run 2 miles only 1 or 2 times a week. There's a lot of different runs, and we come together on Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays. And I think what I really like about the DFW area and what I've found, and I'm sure super similar to pretty much every city in America, is that you've got like your more elite groups like I do with Completely Soft and Trim Pack Assist, but then you've also got some run groups that are more just like gateways into getting into it. And I think since we're on here talking about the Dallas Half Marathon, I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to them and for anyone who's listening to encourage them that again, marathon training and half marathon training takes a really long time. It takes a really long time if you're brand new, and it takes a really long time if you're at my level doing it elitely because I've been doing it for,
For a long time.
3 or 4 years now. And that was on top of a base of running since I was 13.
That's not all that long, 3 or 4 years. I mean, you do have a big
on
base,
top
but
of, yeah, for
close.
sure. But on top of even just like me running in college, right? So there was a big base to begin with there. With whether it was you were participating this year, the BMW 5K, the 10K, your goals are the half marathon, maybe like 3 years down the line, the full marathon. Don't get discouraged by just 1 or 2 races. Just be patient with the cycle and truly take the mantra of it's a marathon, not a sprint, because that goes for training and even just getting
Literally.
out there and doing it takes a while. And
I think that's so true. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I see a lot of runners come in and they have lofty goals when they first start running and never ran a marathon, for example. And it's like, hey, I'm going to go. My goal is to qualify for Boston this year. I was like, you have the ability to qualify. There's no doubt about it. You can see some people that have that ability. But then I was like, but don't be too disappointed because this is your first marathon. You have no idea what that's going to be like. You don't know what it's going to be like on mile 20 when maybe you didn't have enough gels or enough, you just weren't doing it right or whatever. You just learn a lot on that first, second, third marathon. You'll get there. Just continue to push and don't get too disappointed if you don't get it the first try.
And especially too, when talking about paces, I'm a physical therapist. I know that you interviewed the winner of the female marathon for the BMW, and
Yeah.
she's a physical therapist as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, Erin. And so the mantra that we learn is it's frequency and duration and volume first. So get your amount of
Consistency
times
is
a
key.
week and your duration of doing it before you even focus on intensity. So start running, getting
Yes.
amounts of run and volume in before you worry about your pace or how fast you're going. That stuff will come, but don't try to work on going a certain pace or going super fast if you can't get the number up there first.
Excellent advice. I love that. Um, hey, thank you so much, Mimi, for coming on today. This was a great conversation. And
Yeah.
look, I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn from you
Yeah.
and just your passion and things like that. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel. Don't forget to rate and review us. Mimi, thank you again for
Thank you
coming
so
on. Really
much, Chris.
appreciate it.
This was awesome.
Yeah. Take care.